Cinephiles, film enthusiasts, and relaxation seekers. My name is Cinephile ASMR, and today we are talking about the newest installment in the John Wick franchise with John Wick Chapter 4. I am going to make no bones or waste any time saying that the John Wick franchise leading up to Chapter 4 has been one of the most deepest affinities I have had towards a blockbuster franchise ever made. The consistency, involvement, energy on full display in every movie from every set piece is something that I hold personal to me. I've watched these films growing up since I was 10 to where I'm about to be 20, and they have meant a lot to me while on the screen, behind the screen, the passion put into it. And every time I finish them, I think to myself, how are they going to up the ante, upshow what they've done before? How are they going to do things differently? And I have never felt that more than with the lead up of Chapter 4. Of course, the pandemic definitely delayed the release of this film, but after the way 3 ended, I was literally chomping at the bit. But of course, before we get into my full thoughts about Chapter 4, let me know what you thought about John Wick down below. What is your favorite in the franchise? Rank them for me. Of course, I want to know, and don't forget to like, comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Chapter 4 centers on John as he is recovering from a fatal accident faced in Chapter 3, as he is trying to find out how to beat the high table as the bounty on his head keeps getting bigger and bigger. But in order to pursue that and truly find out what he needs to do, he uncovers threats, laws, rules, and so many things about this society that he has never known before. Again, I went in with pretty high, almost borderline insurmountable expectations for Chapter 4. I've been looking forward to this movie for years, literally, and I sat in an IMAX theater, and as the credits rolled, I knew I was in the perfect hands yet again. And I'm gonna say, immediately right off the bat, this film is an anomaly. It is something that has flabbergasted me for the hours as I was watching it, as it is almost 3 hours long, and the few hours after. I have never in recent memory wanted to go rewatch a film in the experience of a theatrical run than I have with John Wick Chapter 4. It erupts on the screen from its opening frame to its last, gushing with so much talent on display, and we are going to talk about it piece by piece. But firstly, I want to just right off the bat, rest in peace to Lance Reddick, man. Watching him on screen in this performance and seeing him throughout the films, every one of his co-stars said that he was the heart of the films, and I totally see it. I definitely do, and rest in peace to him, and I hope his family's doing okay. With that said, I immediately knew that I was in for something incredible. The opening moments of this movie, you hear a lot of people talking about a lot of the stuff later on in the film, but I have to give the flowers where they're needed. There is about an opening-ish segment that kicks off a lot, and I really want to start there, which is the beginning, because John Wick Chapter 4 does something better than any of the other films in the franchise, which is that it introduces characters that you've never seen, and that was my most surprising aspect of the movie, was just how well it integrates new characters, and it takes time to really flesh them out in their opening moments to set where their motives are, where they came from, what's at stake, and it humanized it in a way that I don't think any other John Wick film has done to this potential. That first act of the film does so much legwork, but it makes it look so seamlessly executed. You learn more rules about the high table, about the implications that John Wick's presence and actions have had on the people around him. And one of my favorite parts about the John Wick franchise is the fact that it doesn't try to be anything like Mission Impossible with these big, grandiose scale, and it isn't trying to be anything like Jason Bourne or James Bond. It is set, obviously, with a bit of an absurdist, outlandish take in a realistic lens about a person using hand-to-hand combat, occasional vehicles, and weapons on display. And if I really had to sum up with one word what the first initial reaction I had coming out of the theater was different. Even though, and I said this earlier, every John Wick film follows a similar formula where he's in pursuit of a bad person because they did something to him, and chaos ensues along the way, a lot of kills, a lot of deaths. It's so much fun. Each film has felt different from its story from the rest, primarily in what John Wick is dealing with. The first film was but still tethering that tightrope. And in the second, I found it to be a really interesting idea about a wolf smelling blood again. He starts to fully immerse himself into this sort of assassinating lifestyle again. And the third does face of those repercussions that his actions have had, with the fourth carrying all of those things over, but especially dealing with John's mentality, his morality. Everything has to come to an end, and how is that going to be for John himself? And of course, Keanu kicks ass in this film, delivering one-liners that only a man like he could do. He puts his entire person into this movie, and he's almost 60 years old. That is unbelievable. And truthfully, as I've rewatched these films, I've found the deeper appreciation and a more gravitational pull towards these movies versus a lot of the other franchises, because it is all in camera. It is why these films, even a film like this, almost 3 hours long with $100 million budget, which if you look at other things comparatively is a fraction, works so well. It is all in camera, and my god, does this movie soar in the technical department. I will touch on that in a second though, because the performances I have barely even touched, as of course the returning talent shines as ever. Keanu Reeves, Ian McShane, Lawrence Fishburne really just being the best versions of themselves possible, but the newcomers were honestly what stole the show. You have veteran actor Hiroyuki Sanada, who comes onto the screen given a lot more screen time than I was expecting. You really have an emotional core to him and a character that he interacts with that I just love. Rina Sawayama, she was beautiful in that, performance-wise, visually. I mean, everyone is beautiful in a John Wick film. They're beating with sweat, but they always look good, 110%. An actor that I have never seen before, Shamir Anderson, who plays this tracker on the hunt for John Wick, I really fell in love with as well, because he really offers this sort of newness to these people. You've only understood so much of the high table, what being excommunicated means, and its characters like the tracker, which offers a lot more depth and nuance to things. The literal scene stealer of the entire film was Donnie Yen as Kane. I have not seen Donnie Yen in a film in a very long time, and I think American audiences have not fully embraced Donnie Yen's capabilities, but he plays a person in this that every moment he was in, the screen time just felt like it was his. And my god, these set pieces, the action, the way that he interacts with John Wick, my breath was taken away. I said in my initial reaction to my friends and my partner that this is the greatest action film of the 21st century, and the more I think about it, the more I unbelievably wholeheartedly admit to it. Now, of course, this is 3 hours long, and there's a lot of characters, a lot of villains, a lot of side moments, and of course, I haven't even talked about Scott Adkins as a character literally named Killa, who there's an entire segment dedicated to him, and that scene, oh my gosh, there was moments where I got chills. I literally winced. My theater cheered. It felt like an energy that felt really rare nowadays. That does lead into the fact that the runtime is 3 hours, and I never felt that. But I will say, out of all of the other John Wick films, this one perhaps felt the most disjointed to me. This isn't something very obvious or in your face, but I felt like with compared to the other 3 films, it definitely has moments of action and extended periods of world building and dialogue, and I think when you mesh those two together in 169 minutes, not all of it fits as perfectly together as the other 3 near perfectly paced films. Individually, they're so good, but I think as together, I'm not gonna say every minute was worth it, but I'm not gonna say I was bored at any point, because when you have a film with a soundtrack as banging as this, I literally was thumping my whole body. Set pieces that I can guarantee, I can almost bet on my grave you can never say you've ever seen before. A sense of grandiosity and understanding within the combat, and a final hour which felt like an adrenaline shot for an hour. It was no stop. You were either white-knuckled intense, you were either looking at action left and right, or it was character dialogue that was so unbelievably badass, like there was never a moment to breathe in that final hour. And on that same note, there is that particular shot in this movie, and you're going to hear a lot of people talking about it for good reason, a crane shot that is shooting normal action, and you at first think it's going to be like a POV oneer, but then it cranes up, and it almost is like a video game as John Wick is using a literal gun that is shooting like fired bullets, and everyone is catching on fire. It felt or something. I could not believe what I was watching. The craftsmanship on display. This is Chad Stahelski's magnum opus. Everyone involved gave it their all. And seriously, it is rare for me to say coming out of the theater, especially for sequels that I've loved, that they're cemented in that love. But after seeing Chapter 4, I can't think of a franchise as consistent, as up-to-date in the enjoyment as John Wick. Rewatching the first ones and this one, none of them feel dated or messy in any way. The fact that you can basically start the first one and end the fourth one and it's telling a cohesive story. The simple fact alone that when I look back on it, if you really look at the in-universe time of the first John Wick to the end of the fourth, it probably is only like a month. And that is just what? That I love that. I love that you look at other franchises, Fast and the Furious, introducing all these different characters, putting too many cooks in the kitchen, in my opinion, or Mission Impossible. Not a disservice to that franchise. I adore it, but they're jumping times. But this consistently sticking in a continuity and actually working is something that needs to be studied. All the interviews I've seen of this film, all the behind the scenes, this was made with so much meticulousness that I don't think will ever be topped personally. And honestly, a lot of people are sleeping on the lighting in this film. There is so many lush and vibrant scenes because the lighting really allows and maximizes it. From reds to blues, it's all beautifully saturated and neon. And that's what the John Wick films have always been great at. But again, that is what this movie is. Everything that the John Wick films 1 to 3 have built on and have explored, maximized to 11, while also bringing a side of emotion that I haven't felt since Chapter 1. And it does sincerely make a beautiful ending, a send-off in ways to some characters, but also a potential setup. I'm not sure. I'm not going to spoil any of it, but it really did feel like a finale of it all, and there might be a Chapter 5. I don't know. Chad Stahelski has definitely said that he wants to take a break. Understandably, that man has been working overtime, and I can imagine that Keanu does too, because with all of that being said, John Wick Chapter 4 absolutely exceeded my insurmountably high expectations. As someone who has adored the franchise since the first to now, I came out of this film with my jaw literally extended around the theater. I had to roll it up like a fruit by the freaking foot. So I have to give John Wick Chapter 4 an A+. Man, when was the last time I gave a film an A+? It has been forever, but I can safely say that this film, even though it does feel like 2 hours and 49 minutes put on display, I never felt it truly, but the scenes do kind of feel a bit disjointed, whereas the first three integrated action and dialogue a bit better. I loved every second, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. Set pieces, the moments, the dialogue, the quips, the jokes, the blood, the carnage, the dogs. I love this film. It is iconic beyond measure. It is going to be talked about for years. People are going to look back on it so fondly, especially if you're an action movie fan, a John Wick fan, a film lover. This is a movie that you need to check out. I know there's a lot of action films, so your perception might be a bit clouded towards the fact that John Wick, if you've never given it a chance, is something worth not watching. But I'm here to tell you, there is no franchise out here beyond action, beyond John Wick, beyond Keanu Reeves, in movies, period, that is like this. Man, I loved it. I loved it so much. $100 million to make a movie like this, a labor of love, a labor of passion, and I cannot wait to see it again. I'm probably gonna go see it tomorrow if I can. Oh my god, I would love to. So again, let me know what you thought about John Wick Chapter 4 down below. Give me a ranking if you're curious about my ranking. It is a bit interesting because I love them all, but I have some favorites for sure. Let me know, guys, down below. I love you all so very much. Thank you so much for joining, but remember to take life one frame at a time.